Greetings and welcome to the University of Minnesota Alumni Association's webinar series. My name is John Ruzek and I'm the Senior Director of Alumni Networks and your host today. Welcome. Thanks to everyone who has taken time to join us live today. We're going to be talking with a presenter from the University of Minnesota Extension Office about using a budget to gain financial control, but just a few housekeeping items and some announcements before we get started. Today's webinar series is part of an ongoing free series being offered by the University of Minnesota Alumni Association, where we're having conversations with experts about career, life, and learning topics. And since we started in October 2014, I actually just crunched the numbers yesterday. We've had nearly 6,100 alumni and friends and students join us live for these webinars and over 15,000 YouTube views. So thank you for tuning in and for being with us. Initiatives like these are made part and possible by our Alumni Association members. Because of our members, we can create powerful opportunities for students and our more than 466,000 alumni around the world. And if you're interested in learning more about the Alumni Association or joining, check us out at umnalumni.org/membership. We've had a great week of webinars this past week. That's now up on our YouTube page, but we'll have some upcoming ones here through April that you see listed. One with a panel on recruiters talking about job search tips. On April 20th, a career coach from the Carlson School talking about creating a meaningful career. And then on April 27th, our friends at Credible talking about student debt management and refinancing. You can find that all at umnalumni.org/virtual. Just a few housekeeping items. You've joined the presentation listening using your computer speaker system by default. If you'd prefer to listen over the telephone, just select telephone in the audio pane of your GoToWebinar panel and dial-in information will be displayed. If you're having audio difficulties listening, this might be caused by having multiple applications open or listening via wireless. So shut down any things that you don't need or perhaps move off a wireless signal if you are having any issues. Our presenter today has kindly put up some handouts that you can take with you today, and you'll find that under the handout section in your GoToWebinar control panel. There's 4 documents, and you can download those at any time today during the presentation. And I'll also create a link in the post-webinar email that I send with the recording link that will have the handout as well. So if you can't navigate it today, we'll make sure that you get those. And also, we'd love to hear your questions. So if you do have them, type them in the questions pane on your GoToWebinar control panel, and we'll monitor them along the way. It's now my pleasure to welcome Sharon Powell, who is an educator with the University of Minnesota Extension Center for Family Development. She serves the entire state of Minnesota from her home office in Minneapolis. She divides her time between programs for individuals and families that build financial skills and that build parenting and relational skills. Her work addresses needs at the individual, community, and policy levels through research, education, and outreach. Before joining Extension, Sharon was a lecturer in the Department of Family Social Science at the University of Minnesota. She's earned her master's degree in Human Development Counseling from Vanderbilt University and a PhD in Family Social Science from the University of Minnesota. So she is a proud alumna, and so happy to have her back here today because she actually was very kind enough to do a webinar with us in February on healthy eating on a budget. So welcome, Sharon.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me here today. I'm going to get going because there's a lot of information to cover always when talking about budgeting. And so we'll just start by quickly going over what I'm going to try to talk with you today about. First of all, we're going to talk about determining wants versus needs, which will then help us begin to think about developing goals, both financial and otherwise in our lives. And particularly we at the University of Minnesota Extension like a type of goal that we call a SMART goal. We'll also work on understanding how to track income and expenses, and then becoming familiar with how to develop a spending plan, which is also known as a budget. So just so you know, I will be following this cycle as sort of a template for the time we are spending together. If you were someone who took personal finance, possibly when you were at the U, you may have seen this cycle somewhere along the way. It's pretty common in textbooks, but it basically just helps people have a plan for figuring out how to create a budget or a spending plan for themselves. And generally people start up at the top there with set financial goals. And that's where we will start today too. And then you move clockwise around the cycle. I like this view of a spending plan or a budget because it is cyclical in nature. And that's really important to remember about budgets. I'm the type of person that gets frustrated if I put a lot of work into something, then I want to be done working on it. Like I like to work on things hard one time and then be done and then move on. And it is eternally frustrating to me that budgets and spending plans don't work that way. You work hard on it and it works for a while and eventually it gets out of whack and it doesn't suit your life anymore and you have to readjust. And so I like the fact that this is depicted in this type of a graph that's more like a cycle. So it's a continual kind of tension between your life and the financial tools you use to navigate your life. All right. So as I said, we're going to start by looking at financial goals, but the first part of thinking about financial goals is to really consider needs and wants in your for you. So we have some pretty basic definitions here. The conceptual ideas of needs and wants are not hard to understand at all. Needs can be defined as something that's necessary to live a healthy life, and wants can be defined as something that is desired but not necessary to live. So most of us wind up having far more wants than we have needs. And sometimes there's so many wants out there that it becomes difficult to distinguish between what really is a need and what is a want. So the first thing I'm going to do today is show you some pictures, and I want you to select in the poll whether you think the picture that I've shown you is a need or a want. Okay? So here's the first picture. This is supposed to be a house. It is a house, but that's what I want you to take from it.
So just take a few moments. We'll have a series of these over the next few minutes. So just feel free to type in your response if you feel, and then we'll close it and show it to everybody.
That's it. Done. All right. Okay. So, wow, the winner is It Depends. Well, you guys are my honors class already. Look at that. Abstract thinkers. All right. Let's go to the next one. Candy. Is this a need or a want?
It might depend on the candy, I think.
That's for certain. I want you all to know I'm aware of the fact that picture doesn't have any chocolate in it. I was looking for something that had all types of candy, but I plumped for this one because it's so pretty, all the colors. All right. Oh, most people think that's a want. Okay, great. So now we'll go to the next picture, fancy sports car. What do you think, need or want? What?
Right,
Yeah,
right
some it depends. Nobody says that one's a need. Okay. Finally, how about this cute puppy? What do you think?
All right, a few more it depends, though.
Yeah, look at that. And some needs. It's 15% said needs. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for participating. For those of you that, let's just say the puppy. Let's take the last picture. For those of you who said it was a need, would someone be willing to type into the chat box what makes it feel like a need for you?
Also, depending on your view on the control panel, it might be in the question pane. Stress reduction?
Yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm. That's a good
Absolutely.
example. And, you know, that's what people say a lot of times when they say something like an animal is a need for them. They say things like, well, that's just one of my best friends in the world. I need it for the emotional, you know, relationship that I have, or stress reduction. Yep, some people are have mentioned before service animals or security animals. So those are all great examples of how this might be a need for someone.
Mm-hmm.
So I bring this one up in particular because it frequently, when I throw up a picture of a cute puppy, I get a fair distribution of whether or not people think it's a need, a want, or it depends. And my point in showing you that and highlighting this is that you can't always say for certain that one need for someone is going to be a need for everyone. That you really need to take some time to be introspective about this and say, what is it that feels like a need for me? Because there are some universal needs, like I put a house in there, so that's considered a universal need. Shelter, clothing, food, water, and air. Those are the 5 universal needs. And I don't think anyone would argue with the fact of that. But beyond those 5 things, there are a lot of things that, of course, we're not going to die if we don't have, but that many things serve to make life so much more meaningful for us. And so that's where the distinction lies. And then there's some things like the sports car that some of you said it depends on whether you consider that a want or a need. And I would say it depends too. Not necessarily a fancy sports car, but transportation, of course, is something that is important to all of us to just live our lives here in the United States. Sometimes I teach these classes in far outside of an urban population, and there things like public transit are almost non-existent. So if people want to get around or need to get around, then they're probably going to need to have some form of transportation. So those kinds of things really depend upon your context, so where you live. But what you consider to be a want or need also depends a lot upon your values. And so I'll just say here again, we kind of are defining values for today as a basis for the goals and decisions that we make. And then also really strongly held beliefs. Those are another part of decision making. Of values. So I just want to ask you quickly, do you guys have any ideas of how you think your values influence your decisions when it comes to money? Can anyone come up with an example of how your values might influence your decision making?
And if you have any ideas, just type them into the questions pane, and we'll see those live here as you type those in.
Mm-hmm. It's okay if you don't. A lot of times people have a hard time laying hands to this when I say that, but if you value adventure or vacation or time, well, you need to save money more for trips and whatnot. Yeah, that's a good point. Yep. So have you ever known anyone, or maybe you yourselves or someone who participate in some sort of faith community and you give regularly to that faith community? Sometimes that's called a tithe or an offering. I think that's a pretty good example of your values influencing your decision making when it comes to money. Adventure requires vacation, someone says, or saving for the future. Yeah, those are all great examples. Thank you, John. So I have a question for you that I think helps elucidate this as well. Does anyone in here shop at thrift stores? And if you do, will you chat in there what it is you like about shopping at thrift stores? If you do not, will you chat about why you don't do it? Ooh, Kristen has a great example of values and decision making, spending a lot on meat to make sure you buy humanely raised animals. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I was doing this class on budgeting, I mentioned the co-op that I go to a couple of times, and that says a lot really about my values if you just know I shop at a co-op. Ooh, thrill of the hunt at thrift stores. Constance, the thrift store shopper, sounds like.
Not sure about quality of products.
Gargi does not shop at them, sounds like. A little bit it's just more a mystery there. I hear you. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Derek likes the low price and kind of fun to see what you find there. Yeah, you guys are hitting on a lot of the reasons. And I think these answers that you're giving also will give us some clues as to your values around decision making and money. So everybody knows that thrift stores exist, and everybody knows that you can get things for very inexpensive prices there. And some people buy a ton of stuff there. Some people don't buy anything at all. And usually the reason why has something to do with, their value about money and spending money. So way back in the beginning of this question, Constance said the thrill of the hunt. So one thing you value, it sounds like, is just the adventure of going to thrift stores. And someone else mentioned the low prices. That was Derek, I think. And that's something that Derek values, getting a good bargain. Gargi said he's not sure about the quality, so getting good quality for the money that you spend sounds like a value you would have. So those are all examples. And then I would say one for me, I do like to shop at thrift stores, and one thing I like about them is that personally I get concerned about the amount of just stuff that's created in the world and the waste that we produce. And so I like going to thrift stores because then I feel like I'm using things, and then they don't go into the landfills, let's say, as quickly. So, and then Kristen has this great example too. She says, I hate spending the time to find something in a thrift store. At Target, I know where everything is, and it takes less time. You're exactly right. You can go right in and get it. And sometimes at thrift stores, you don't even know if they're going to have it. So yeah, that's a really great point. So good work, everybody. That's interesting. Oh yeah, I don't have to move that. It's interesting to hear what goes on for all of you in this decision making. And a lot of the decision making we have around money is kind of unconscious. Like, I don't think anybody's probably ever sat down and really weighed out, their decision making about going to thrift stores, for instance. But nevertheless, it has a strong influence upon the choices that we make. So it's a good thing to remember as well when you're considering what really is a place where you want to spend your money. Because when it really comes down to it, the heart of financial management is figuring out a way to have enough money to pay for all of our needs, and I think some of our wants, because as I said before, needs are important, but I just think life is beautiful when we have a little time to celebrate the wonder and the great things in it as well, and that usually means that we're going to have some wants that we want to get satisfied as well. Okay, so once you get your needs and wants kind of hammered out for yourself, those are going to really influence goal setting generally. And setting goals is a great way to improve your chances of getting all of your needs met and some of your wants met. And I will tell you that in general, goals, you're much more likely to achieve a goal if you take a goal that's in your head and then you just write it down on a piece of paper. If you only take that preliminary step, you're already increasing your chances of having your goal met. And I'm not sure why humans are this way, but it happens to be the case that if you just take it out of your head and put it on paper, it becomes a much more real kind of plan for you. But at U of M, we'll delve even deeper into the world of goals. So I'll start by saying that goals typically are divided into categories based upon how long it takes to complete them. So people tend to talk about short-term, medium-term, or also they're called intermediate goals, and then long-term goals. Today, I will say that short-term goals can be defined as taking less than 6 months to complete. And then the medium-term goals take between 6 months and a year to complete. And the longer-term goals take longer than a year to complete. So again, I have some polls for you. I have pictures here. I want you to take a look at this mother and son. How long do you guys think it would take you to complete the goal of planning a party for your high school graduate? Assuming they're going to graduate in May, let's say. Which kind of goal would this one be, do you think? Yeah, you guys got it. Short term. Right, because that's coming up soon. How about if you wanted to take a trip and to visit friends or family? So to pay for that kind of a trip, what would you think that might be? A short-term, medium-term, or long-term goal? Look at that. A lot of folks are medium-term, so 6 months to a year. Mm-hmm. I'd probably put myself in that category too, but there's some short-term folks who are, depends on where your family lives too, I guess. Okay, and then how about if you wanted to buy a van, a minivan? How long do you think that would take? Long term. Oh, moving around a little bit. Yeah, medium term or long term. Very few people just have the money sitting around to go buy a car in less than 6 months, right? Yeah, so these all vary depending upon, the thing that your goal. And in addition to financial experts liking to break things up into categories, they also suggest that when it comes to goals, you're more likely to successfully achieve goals if you divide up your goals into a variety of terms. So you want some that are short term, some medium term, some long term. What do you think would happen if you had all long term goals? You can chat that question, I guess.
If you had all long-term goals.
Yeah.
Well, probably you wouldn't get any, maybe nothing would kind of get done in the short term, and so you kind of maybe keep putting if all your goals are long term, it's always well in the future, and and so maybe you're not meeting then your short term needs.
Yeah, the horizon's too far away, you're saying?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's
maybe
true.
that sense of accomplishing something.
Yeah, I think it's human nature. We need a little bit of affirmation for the work we're doing. So if you put every goal too far in the future, you run out of steam basically before you get there. But the way you can remedy that then, if you have a lot of long-term goals, is just take those long-term goals and divide them into a series of shorter-term goals. So, and that makes them feel more doable a lot of the time as well. So that's really what a lot of short-term goals turn into anyway, is steps on the way to a long-term goal. See if anybody, okay. Oh yeah, okay, so I told you guys we were going to talk about this certain kind of goal called a SMART goal. And SMART is just an acronym for the characteristics of the goal. So each letter in SMART represents a characteristic of the goal. And this is one of the handouts I have for you. I just have a little table that has the different characteristics with a couple of questions associated with each of them. So I won't pull it up right now, but I'll tell you, I'll confess, even though I teach this content quite a bit in my life, and I'm a big proponent of SMART goals, they were not a natural fit for me. Temperamentally, they were hard for me because I'm a big picture, kind of abstract thinker, and SMART goals require a person to become very specific. So I like to keep things in the forest rather than the trees, but guess what? If I do that all the time, I don't wind up getting a lot of things accomplished. So it's incumbent upon me to take these big, grand ideas I have and break them down into actually manageable, doable steps. And SMART goals actually really help me a lot in doing that. So I'm a convert. I like SMART goals now. But I'll also confess to you that I frequently don't complete an entire acronym for myself. Sometimes I just get through the S and the M. And I still find them to be very helpful because remember, as I said, even if you just write down a goal, you're already helping yourself out a little bit. So if you just do even a portion of the SMART goal exercise, I think you will find it very useful. So I want to go over a couple of the parts of the letters so that you can have some tips for making it easier. One reason why I find goals overwhelming is because it's just hard to know where to start. So one thing I really like about SMART goals is they give me some specific questions that I can answer when I'm feeling, like it's difficult to begin. The S in specific is made more easy to handle by just thinking of that in terms of answering the 5 W questions about your goal. So I know because you guys are already, I can tell, the honors class, who can say what the 5 W's are, or John can, I bet John knows. You guys want to type it in?
So if you know what the 5 W's are, feel free to type it in the questions pane.
Look at that. Courtney's on it. That's right. Who, what, when, where, and why. Gargi totally got it. Nice work. Who, what, when. Oh, and how. Yeah, how you can always throw in there, even though it's an H, but it fits right in with the other ones. So yeah, if you take whatever goal it is you have and you answer those questions, the 5 W's, about that goal, it automatically specifies your goal to a much larger degree. And it's really helpful. Not to mention that sometimes in order to answer those questions, you have to go and do other kind of research and work to find the answer to that question. So like for instance, if I had the goal of buying a house by a certain time, like let's say if I wanted to have a down payment for a new house by 1 year from now, that would give me 12 months to work. And so in order to answer that question, and then I might answer the question, what part of the country would I want to buy my house in? So then in order to know how I would proceed to be ready to buy the house in 1 year, I would have to look up, say, housing prices in that area so I could know what an average down payment was on a house in the area where I was planning to buy. And so then I would get an amount that I could shoot for and begin to see how much that would cost me in terms of savings each month in order to be able to reach that goal. So very quickly it turns into just something like, I want to be in my own home by 1 year from today, to coming to a real life plan about here's what I need to have in order to be able to do that. And then you begin to think about how, that extra question. Okay, so instead of 5 W's for the specific part, and then if you go down to the M in SMART, that stands for measurable. And one way you can make sure, one reason why it's important to have a measurable goal is because you want to know whether or not you've achieved it. Just like we were saying a little bit earlier, sometimes achieving a goal, if you have too far of a timeline and you don't have any affirmation, your motivation tends to wither away. And so this is the case as well with knowing whether or not you've achieved your goal. You want it to be measurable so that you can be sure to congratulate yourself if you meet the goal. So you want it to be something that's not fuzzy. It has to be a definite thing you can say, did I meet this goal or did I not? And the way to do that is to create your goal in such a way that meeting it would be the answer to a yes/no question, a true/false question, or a number. That way you can know, let's say your goal is to save up money for a trip, like I mentioned in the other thing, and you want to save up $5,000. So you're saving, you're on track, and then, you get to your deadline, and you've managed to save $4,800. Well, you can say to yourself, well, I didn't quite meet my goal. I still have $200 to go. What I would probably do is say, but $4,800 is close enough, so good for me. But you might be someone who says, I got to find that other 200. What am I going to do now? I got to reevaluate, create a new plan. Whatever you choose to do, it gives you a good measuring stick by which to do that. So you want to make it measurable, and then attainable. Basically, you just want to make sure that you can do whatever you want. When I mentioned this goal of an example goal of buying a house by 1 year from today, I know very quickly in my own, just because I know my own finances, that's completely unattainable for me a year from now. I couldn't just save up money from scratch and have enough money to have what I would want is a 20% down payment on the cost of the home. So that would be a really unattainable goal for me. And the neat thing about filling out those 5W questions for yourself is that it can give you a pretty good idea of whether or not the initial goal you have set is attainable. And if it is attainable, go for it. If it doesn't seem attainable, then you can adjust before you start on your plan. And adjusting before you start on your plan saves you the heartache of learning that, oh my gosh, I'm setting off on this plan and I'm not going to fulfill it. And then people tend to feel pretty disappointed in themselves, or maybe even ashamed of themselves if they continually are unable to achieve goals. So I really think SMART goals can help leverage your chances of achieving a goal. And that's my favorite part of my work, is helping people identify ways that they can be successful in their financial management rather than feel like they're falling short. Okay, the final one, are relevant. That one to me is pretty self-explanatory, but you want to make sure whatever plan you develop for your goal will actually lead you to reach your goal. So that's a good one to consider. And then finally, time bound. You want an end date for your goal. Even if you're going to re-up and start again, like for instance, I have a goal of having money set aside for retirement. So I contribute every pay period to my retirement plan. I'm planning to do that for as long as I work, but I still kind of have yearly goals where I stop and I look to see if, I'm satisfied with my plan, and if I want to change things or adjust things. That's why it's a good idea, I think, to have it be time bound, so that you can stop and evaluate and make changes if you need to. Okay, so there you go. There's a SMART goal. And I just want to show you an example of, here's a general goal, save money for an apartment. And if I already did it because we're kind of crunched for time, but if you apply all of the tricks of a SMART goal, then you can change that goal into save $50 a week for the next 24 weeks, which would be a total of $1,200 for the first month's rent and security a deposit on an apartment. So that, I think, is a helpful goal, and they'll really help people to achieve it. And I bet what some of you are thinking when you look at this is, oh, I'm glad Sharon did that, because she's kidding herself if she thinks she can find an apartment for $600 around here. But you never know where you might go somewhere and find a $600 apartment. Okay. So you get your goals set in this budget cycle, and then we move on to taking in some information about ourselves. And the easiest way to do that is to do some serious research about where your money comes from and where your money goes. And there's two tools that I've given you to help you get a handle on that. One is called a calendar page, and the other is called a spending log. Should have put a goal in quick to see if anybody's used either of those. But has anyone in here ever used a calendar page when they're working on their budgeting or you can just type in yes if you have. No. Okay. How about a spending log? Has anyone here ever used a spending log, or it's sometimes called a spending tracker?
Would that be like something like Quicken or something, like an online tool? Or
sometimes they have them online. Yeah, it could be a part of Quicken. I'm not that familiar with Quicken, yeah. So but
basically it'd just be like almost like an online savings or checking register but if you're categorizing expenses, then you can pull up like, I've spent this much on the last month on auto, home, things like that.
Yes, yeah. It's very much.
Yeah, I do that with all my stuff. Because I guess I'm probably more type A that way. But,
oh, yeah? You like to see where it's going?
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, it's important, especially if you're a member of a family, let's say, and there's multiple people using the money that, some people are earning it and more people are spending it. It's really hard to keep tabs on where the money's going. So this helps a lot. Let's see. Yep. And Derek mentions that credit cards frequently will give you a pie chart that shows you, they categorize your spending for you. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you guys are in the know. Oh, in Excel, Gargi. Yeah, that's a great way to do it. And you can just build that yourself. Okay. So I'm going to show you guys the calendar page first. This is just a picture of it. You have it in your attachments as well that you can download and use however you want. And I think the calendar page is really helpful because it just adds that sort of chronological component to my money management that I find very helpful. Because I now am someone who uses the automatic payment method on most of my regular monthly bills. And so it's great because I always make sure my bills are paid on time. So I'm in good standing with all of that. But I tend to lose track of when they're getting paid then. And so, they catch me off guard sometimes. So I want to make sure I have enough money in my account to manage all these bills. So it helps me to list on a piece of paper just basically the days that the different regular monthly expenses are being pulled out of my account. So that's what I do. And then you can also use this to record things like income for the week. Now, I have one job and I'm paid on a salary. So I know what my income is going to be every week because it's the same. But sometimes people have jobs where they get paid in different ways. Like maybe if you're in the what do you call it when you're a server, like a waiter or a waitress or something like that? It's not exactly certain how much money you're going to be making each week. So you might want to record what your income would be. So this is one way you can just keep track of all that, and I find it to be pretty helpful. Okay. So the other thing about it, you can track your income on this calendar, and that's useful as well, especially if you're someone who does have some variability in your pay, or if you have more than one job. This can be helpful too. The other way I find this useful, I told you I get paid on a salary and it gets paid every other week. So it's a very regular event in my life, and I'm grateful for that. But one thing that is a little bit exciting about my salary is that I get paid 26 times a year because it's every other week. So generally I get paid twice a month, but there's 2 months out of the year where I get paid 3 times a month. And that is right now, March is one of those months. And so that is always, I think, very exciting, because then it's like I get paid a time and a half for that month, basically. So because I know those are coming, thanks to charting it on calendars and stuff, I can have more of a intentional plan for that money than I might if it just caught me off guard. So that's just another thing you can sort of do when you have a calendar like this. In general, I think money management can be you can really help yourself in terms of money management just the more information you have. So things like a calendar where you just have a better overall picture of when your money's coming in and when it's going out can be very helpful. Even if you don't have any change in how much is coming in or going out, just knowing about it tends to make people feel better about it. You feel a little more in control, basically. Okay. Anyone want to say anything about that? Okay. So then I'm going to show you an example of our spending log that we use at U of M Extension. It is really basic. You have an attachment for that as well. It's just a piece of paper, basically, that covers the date that you've spent the money, what you spent it on, how much you spent, and then they like for you to use cash or credit. I don't care as much about that. I just want you to have a description of where your money's going. So the way spending logs work really is you decide on a set period of time. I recommend 1 month, and then you just begin to record every single thing you spend money on for that period of time. And if you're a member of a family, it's great if you can record everything you and the other adults in your family spend money on, because that just has a lot to do with what your family finances look like. But anyways, the beauty of this kind of tool is that you just really begin to get an understanding of where your money goes in its natural state, not outside of any kind of plan. Like I said, a spending log is just descriptive in nature. So you get to look at it and see, oh, wow, look how much money we're spending on parking. I never had any idea. Or boy, oh boy, we spend a lot more going out to eat than I realized. Or, you have all kinds of categories that you can make. And there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how you gather this information. You guys have mentioned some good examples on here. I advocate in terms of a spending log or a spending tracker that you keep your own rather than relying on somebody else's reporting back to you. Like some people go through Mint or their bank or something like your credit cards. And the reason why I like for you to keep your own for a while is because you have multiple ways of paying for things. So like you can pay with your check card or you can pay with your credit card. But whatever you use to pay with, say, your credit card won't know what you've spent from your checking account. You're the only person who has knowledge about every single way that you spend money, and you want to get a comprehensive view of the ways that you're spending money, regardless of the method of spending money. So it's a good idea, I think, just to keep your own for a little while. And again, I recommend a month because many of us have monthly expenses, but that may be more than you can handle at this time. So you can shoot for a week and see what you find out from doing that too. Anyways, once you get these log basically of where you're spending the money, then you can begin to put it into categories, like just as John mentioned. And that's really helpful to know that. And the best thing about knowing this before you create an actual budget or spending plan is that then you have an idea of where at baseline you just spend money naturally. So when you create a budget, it's really good to start with it being very similar to your natural spending patterns, because if you go too far away from that, it's just really hard to maintain. So you want to start kind of where you are, and then if there's changes you want to make, do it incrementally so it doesn't feel so extreme in the process. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys this video about spending leakages, they're called. And what I'm going to do, I can't share my audio with you, only my video. So I'm going to still show you the pictures. And I'm just going to kind of describe to you what's going on. It's this woman. It's kind of a funny video. She's confessing about a problem, she calls it. She's addicted to Diet Coke. Oh, should I tell it to start?
No.
Okay. And I'll just tell you what she's saying. She buys Coke at convenience stores, and there it costs about $1.15 and $1.89 at fast food places. And she buys about 3 of those gigantic cups a day, she says. So there it is, 3 a day. They each cost about $1 at the convenience store. So she spends $3 a day, basically. 90 cups a month, or $90 a month. And then she multiplied that times a year, and she gets $1,080 she spends on Diet Coke. Then she confesses that she's actually been doing this for about 10 years. And so then she's showing you all those cups. Speaking of landfills. Yeah, $1,080 a year for 10 years is $10,800. So that's how much money she spent on Diet Coke over the last few years. Then the light is thrown on her. It's pretty cute. So anyways, I really like that video because it's just a great example of how this money can get away from us. And spending logs allow us to shed some light on those leakages, the places where the money is going. Oh, you guys can, let's see. Okay. All right. So what about you guys? Does anybody in here have an example of missing money for you? So like this same idea of the spending log kind of solves that mystery of if you've ever had the experience of setting out for the day and you have a whole bunch of money in your pocket and by the end of the day you have none and you think, what did I even spend that on? Where did it go? Do any of you guys have missing money? I'll confess that I'm sitting here drinking a Diet Coke right now while I'm talking with you guys. So definitely I can resonate with the Diet Coke addiction thing.
I found if you keep track of it, like fast food, that adds up versus like, money. I mean, you can spend money on groceries, but groceries in the long run are cheaper than, fast food or going out to restaurants or just even like, if you're having a glass of wine or a beer, like at a restaurant,
Yeah.
And if you keep track of those specifically, that adds up over time.
It does. Actually, you saying that reminds me, there's a hidden benefit to keeping a spending log that I didn't realize till I started doing it. And that it acts as sort of a spending suppressant for me because I know I'm going to have to write it down later. Mm-hmm. So I sometimes think, I would love to buy that. Then I'm like, I'm going to have to write it down because I'm keeping a spending log right now. I'm like, I don't want it that bad that I have to acknowledge the purchase. Mm-hmm. But I don't keep them all the time. I don't think anyone should. It could drive you nuts. But let's see what everybody says. Groceries, coffee's out, gifts. Yeah, those are great examples. Derek says his wife is the cause of all their missing money. Well, she's not here to defend herself, so I won't take that as evidence yet. $1 snacks at office vending machines. Yep. Half our bill at restaurants or movies just on drinks. Yeah, that's true. Drinks at the movie theater is so expensive. The movies themselves are getting so expensive. Yeah, buying coffee versus making it and carrying your own. Yeah, those are great examples. It's really, nobody in here has said so, but as frequently I'll be teaching this class to someone who smokes cigarettes, and oh boy, can that add up too, So these are the kind of things that, as I said, it's very illuminating that way. And I tend to be a Pollyanna-ish kind of glasses half full person. So when I first started teaching this, I would say, guys, it's so fun. You see where your money's going. But I've learned over the years that not everyone sees this as a fun activity. It can be pretty harsh to face the reality of where your money's going. So I would say to you, go gently with yourself. If don't feel bad if you see places and you think, I can't believe it. Most other people feel that way as well. Mm-hmm. Okay, so once you begin to have a really good idea of where your money's going, then you're ready to create a spending plan. And like I said, I really recommend that you use that natural kind of spending pattern as your beginning place to create a spending plan. And basically how a spending plan works, it's likely you're familiar with this, but you list all of your income. Make sure you get all that listed down. And then you want to list all of your expenses. And same thing with spending plan that I said for a spending log. You want to be as exhaustive as possible. Just every last area where money would come in, every last area where your money goes out. The more you can include in that, the more useful your spending plan will be because it will be most closely reflective of your own life. The less reflective it is, the less useful it is, because it just doesn't add up for you. So once you get all those expenditures listed, then you just total up both your income and your expenses, and you subtract your expenses from your income. And the goal is to have either a zero there or a positive number. Kind of depends upon your perspective. A lot of financial experts want to see a zero net every month so that you are making use of every amount of money you have coming in. I am not a financial guru in that way. I think it's more comforting to have a little cushion. So I prefer to have a positive net in my own banking account, but you can do whichever you feel. And there's a lot of people out there that don't have positive right now. They have a negative net, and that is not the end of the world. A lot of people are in that position, and the good thing about having a budget, even if it's alarming to see that you're spending more than you're earning, is that it gives you some really good, solid numbers to know what you need to do to change that. You either need to then know, okay, I'm spending this much right now, I'm earning this much. If I can't change any of my expenses, I think I need to start bringing more money in. So you can look at ways to increase your income. Or likewise, you could say, I'm earning this much, there's really not any space for me to earn more money right now, so I'm going to have to decrease those expenses. And so same thing, you can look then at ways to decrease your expenses. And those, when it all comes down to it, those are really only two choices. If you have a negative net, you need to either increase your income or decrease your expenses. So that's just in short the way a spending plan works. And I wanted to just take a quick closer look at expenses in general, and well, income and expenses. First of all, income can have several different types to it, which will become important when you're thinking about a budget. There's regular income and irregular income. So regular income is like what I mentioned, that, I get paid a salary the same amount every 2 weeks. So I know that's coming, and I know, when it's coming and how much it's going to be. Irregular income, on the other hand, is something that doesn't come at a regular time, and that maybe the amount differs as well. So the example I gave of people who work on commission or work for tips, would that kind of money would count as irregular income. Another common type of income is seasonal income. So that would be someone who, let's say, is a construction worker and earns a lot of money in the summertime, or someone who does snow plowing, earns a lot of money in the winter. Sometimes people pick up extra money at Christmas time by doing a second job. Those are all examples of seasonal income. And then there's periodic income, which comes only every now and then. Maybe if you get some sort of distribution from investments, that could count as periodic income. And then I forgot to put down here, but there's one-time income as well that you just get every now and then, like one time. Like maybe a tax refund could count as a one-time income, or sometimes people get tax credits even. So those are all different types of money that come in, and depending on their characteristics, you're going to use them differently in your budget. In general, what budget experts like to see is a very boring, flat line budget. So you don't have this sort of situation where it's like, oh, I have all this money coming in, and then, oh no, I don't have any money coming in. What they would love is if the amount of income you have to work with each month looks very identical. Just every month you have the same amount. So if you get something like seasonal income, then what they would love for you to do is to take that money and manage it for yourself in your budget in a way that it looks like regular income. So you would sort of dole it out for yourself over the months. So same thing with periodic income, or certainly one-time income. How can you use that money to augment your budget in a very regular and predictable way? Expenses, on the other hand, are considered, there's kind of three major categories. There's fixed, flexible, and periodic. Okay, I've been talking a long time, so I'll just ask a quick chat. Can anybody give me an example of a fixed expense in your life? Yeah, rent. That's a great example. Mortgage, yep. For some people, it's like cell phones, house payment, yep. So the fixed expenses basically are you pay the same amount each month, regardless of how much you use it. So that's why rent or home mortgage are a great example. You pay the same amount every month. Then there's another kind of expense called flexible. So those are expenses that you incur based upon usage. So you only pay for what you use. Can you guys give me an example of a flexible expense in your life? It's also called variable. So it changes, variable, flexible. Yeah, water bill. Yeah, utilities in general, sometimes cell phone data usage. Yep. So the difference for me is that, like, the way I think about a fixed expense is, let's say I was renting an apartment and I have my monthly rent, and then I decide to go on vacation for 2 weeks. So I'm not living in my apartment. I'm on vacation. But when I come back, I can't tell my landlord, hey, I was gone for 2 weeks out of this month, so I'm only going to pay you for half the month because I was only there. If I was out of town for that same amount of time and I didn't buy any groceries when I was gone, then I don't have to pay anything for groceries while I'm out of town. So there's a real difference between those two. Okay, and then periodic expenses are things that come only every now and then. So I saw someone mention college tuition earlier as an example of an expense, and for a lot of people, college tuition is a periodic expense. So the beginning of the semester pops up, and it's time to pay your tuition. Also, sometimes for people, things like insurance payments are periodic, like you only pay it every 6 months maybe, or every quarter. Those things can be tricky sometimes with a budget because they don't come on a very frequent basis. Sometimes people will forget about them, and then they're sort of like caught off guard when it's time to pay them. But again, what budget experts like is for you to quickly, or to, not quickly, but just to work that into your budget so that you set aside money in anticipation of paying those things. And the main way that you would ever be able to anticipate payment of those things is if you've kept records for a while and you know to expect these things are coming, which goes back to that idea I was saying that if you do nothing more than just get a better overall kind of view of your expenses, like where your money's coming from, where it's going, I think you're going to feel better about your life, because then you know, okay, this is coming up. I'm going to develop a plan for that. Or maybe you'll say this is coming up and I'm not going to develop a plan, but at least I know it's coming. All right. So these are all kind of examples of ways to approach your budget. So yeah, that's it. Okay, fine. Once you have your plan in place, again, it's helpful if you can continue to monitor your expenses, or your income and your expenses, so you can know how accurate your spending plan is. Mostly people need to adjust it a little bit after they get it put down on paper, because no one gets every category exactly right the first time. So you'll say, for instance, we're going to set aside $200 a month for entertainment, and then you follow the plan, and then you see, oh, look at that, we only spent $150 this month. So maybe we need to adjust that down a little bit, but we spent more than we expected on groceries. So we'll put that 50 into groceries instead, or something like that. But you have to be willing to sort of monitor and look at stuff. Oh, where can we get the templates? Oh, they're in, John, are you going to answer that? Okay, yeah. Somebody asked, where can we get the templates for these different things I was telling you about? And they're under handouts, in the pane over on the right-hand side where the chat is and all that kind of stuff. I have those listed in there. Okay, so then it really helps, as I said, if you continue to monitor and adjust this. Now, so that's kind of quick and dirty how you keep a budget. There's some things I really want you to keep in mind, and these things that I'm saying are based upon teaching this over and over again, responses I get from people. One, successful budgeting is composed of tools that you use to monitor and manage your income and expenses. That is it. All of these things, I feel like in financial management world, get sort of this reputation as being like the answer to everything, or there's definitely a should kind of feeling about all of this. Like, here's how you should do a good budget, or this is what you should be doing to be a responsible adult, or whatever. And I don't agree with that. I think there are a lot of ways to be to use these tools, that they're no kind of magic answer or anything like that. It's just ways for you to be able to be more knowledgeable about your own information. I just told you there's no right way to do this, so I mixed 1 and 2 together. Whatever works for you is the right way. So an example I'll give you from my own life is that with my own budgeting, I grew up with a father who is just so meticulous about his finances. He's the kind of guy that looks forward to doing his taxes every year. He thinks it's such a blast. He always knows, down to the penny where his money's coming from and going. And I didn't inherit 1 iota of that from him. I'm just not like that. I'm not totally irresponsible, but I just don't think about things in the way he does. And so I frequently in my earlier life felt like I just wasn't any good at money management. But over the years, what I've discovered is I am good at it. It's just I have my own style. So with something like a budget, I don't have a super detailed budget. I have kind of categories that I know, here's how much I want to be spending in this category. Here's how much I want to be spending in this category. And then the way I make sure I do that is I just use the old-fashioned envelope system. And guys, John told you I have my PhD. I mean, I can think about things in complex ways, but this is just the easiest way for me. So like for groceries, I just put my money for the month that I want to spend on groceries in the envelope, I use cash. And then when, I'm out of that money, hopefully it's close to the end of the month because I'm not spending any more in groceries till we get to the end of the month. And luckily for me, I'm in the situation that I have plenty of money in the freezer and the cabinets. So, we can be creative, but, that's just how I find it works for me. So everybody has a way to do it. And then finally, budgeting is really a work in progress. So if you have a goal you set for yourself of like, I want to be this kind of money manager. Here's the success rate I want to have. Don't feel too bad if you're not that way right now. It's something that you just learned it over time. It takes practice and going back to it and starting and trying again. And that's just the way it works. So don't be too down on yourself if you're not in the place you'd like to be yet, because you can always make progress. And I would say something like setting up a budget takes a number of hours to do if you want it to really be accurate. So give yourself time and give yourself the, just the mental space you need to be able to do this. All right, I think that's about it for me, except to say I have this email address listed on here. This is our extension website for families, individuals and families, and we have lots more information on budgeting on there. Feel free to go and look around, and you can always contact me if you have further questions. Do we have a moment for people to do questions or comments?
If you have some questions, we have a few minutes here before 1 o'clock. As far as if you have some other questions for Sharon, feel free to type them in. One thing that you mentioned, like just what I found with tracking where your money goes, especially if your employer has like healthcare savings accounts, like going back and saying like how much you actually spend on doctor copays and things like that, so you can more accurately set a dollar amount of what you should squirrel away in that health savings account versus overestimating or underestimating possibly.
That's a fantastic example. Yeah, because I find those things totally befuddling. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, let's see. This is really helpful. Do you have any further tips to help reduce credit card debt? Well, yes, I do. It's a big question. The main thing I would recommend in short is that you pay more than the minimum balance. Someone mentioned that somewhere else in here. But even if you can pay just like $5 or $10 over the minimum balance, you're going to save yourself a lot of money in interest. And then another thing about reducing credit card debt is one of the benefits to doing that is that you improve your credit score. So you want to just make sure you pay those bills on time. If all you can handle is the minimum balance, then just pay that. Paying it on time is a really big thing that credit bureaus are looking at, and that will really affect your score more than paying down the entire balance at once. But yeah, I would say in general, pay more than the minimum, pay them on time, and sometimes people talk about, in terms of debt in general, there's something called the snowball method, and then there's the highest interest rate method. So if you have multiple credit cards, the highest interest rate method would say, look for which of your credit cards charges the most in interest, and you pay that balance down first, because you'll be, accruing more more debt by not doing that. The snowball method suggests that you take the lowest balance of all of your debt and you pay that one off first, and then you take the money that you use to pay that one off and you devote that to another debt, and then you pay the next, smallest one off. And by doing that over time, you get more debt paid, you get more debtors paid down more quickly, though you'll still have a larger amount of debt. But it's kind of fun that way. Makes you feel good about getting some paid off. Let's see. What about reducing student loan debt? Do the same rules apply? Well, it depends on student loans. It depends on where you borrowed them from as to how I might answer that. If all of your loans are federal student loans, you have a lot of flexibility in terms of repayment. Certainly, no, with student loans, I wouldn't say for sure pay more than the minimum payment, because sometimes there are programs that like loan forgiveness programs, or sometimes and then they certainly have things like income-based repayment plans for you. And so there is going to be, I think, a student loan deal coming up, right?
Actually on April 27th, we'll be doing a live webinar with Credible, who's a student debt consolidator that partners with our alumni association. So they'll be doing a live webinar on April 27th. And actually we have, if you go to our YouTube page, where you can find that on umnalumni.org/virtual. We actually have the recording of last year's webinar with Credible. But yeah, I think like Sharon mentioned, it's really dependent on where your loans originate from, what are some of the rules of refinancing. But yeah, we have a couple of those resources out there as well.
And in general, creditors or lenders don't consider student loan in the same category as credit card loans, because most people consider student loans as not consumer debt, which consumer debt is defined as debt that is borrowed for something that depreciates in value over time, and education is never considered to depreciate in value over time. It's considered to increase in value. So they tend to look more favorably upon student loan debt. So yeah, that's a good question though, and I'd be happy to talk about it. Those are both kind of big areas, both credit card debt and student loan debt. So I'm happy to talk about that with you in more depth at a later time. But yeah. Okay, well, that's it for me, I think.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sharon, for joining us today, and
my pleasure.
All the people online. As we just mentioned one of the webinars coming up on April 27th, and also some of the other career-related ones. So definitely check those out at umnalumni.org/virtual. And just in conclusion, just want to thank everyone who's taken time today and has supported this webinar series. And if you're interested in learning more about the Alumni Association, visit us at umnalumni.org/membership. That's the conclusion of today's webinar. Have a wonderful day.